been responded, so that's why I was a doubt. Okay. Ramya, Anush. Today we are finished with the Markensia and the life cycle in the yesterday's and the previous days classes. So today we'll start with another genera of the Bryophyte, which is called as Anthoceros. Okay. Now, so this is another genera, slightly developed genera when compared to the Markensia. Many of the characters of the Anthoceros and Markensia, they resemble with each other with exceptional few differences. So just I'll make you those differences highlighted. Then we'll go with the deep study. Okay. Right. So highly advanced. So slightly advanced than Markensia. Okay, what are those? So first we'll go with the systematic position, that is the classification. So this also belongs to the division Bryophyta, and the class belongs to it is Anthoceratopsida, Anthocerotales order, family Anthocerotaceae, and Anthoceros. So you can see here the diagram or the picture of the Bryophyte Anthoceros. It something looks like small grasses or the plants coming out, but they are not the grass plants. Right. So here you can see. So these Anthoceros is commonly called as, there is a common name called to that is the hornworts. So just I'll write the spelling over here. They are called as hornworts. Horn. So what do you mean by horn? So Markensia common ga ఏమని చెప్పామమ్మా? We call Markensia as what? Markensia ఏమని చెప్పాం? Common ga ఏమని పిలిచాం వాటిని? Based on the shape. Yes, ma?
Liverwort, ma'am.
Liverworts, very good. So as the shape of the thallus resembles just like a liver lobes, we call them as the liverworts. And here this Anthoceros, what we are talking about, they are called as hornworts. Horn and eppudu kuda they are resembling the animal komulu, horns antam kada. So the sporophyte which is emerging out, that will resemble just like a horn of the animal. So andukani common ga vitini hornworts ani pilustar. Right. Now when you go to the habitat, so where is this Anthoceros growing? So here this Anthoceros also grows in shady and moist areas. So just like all the bryophytes, that is a common point. Okay, grows in shady and the moist areas of all the tropical and the temperate regions of the world. They are worldwide. They are growing everywhere. They occur everywhere in the world, and in the generally during the tropical and the temperate regions. So there are around 200 species of these Anthoceros, but the common species what we see in India, that is in the Himalayan regions. So generally they grow in the Himalayan regions of our Indian country. So it includes Anthoceros himalayensis, erectus, and chambensis. These are the three Indian species generally found in the Himalayas, but rest of them they are found in the other countries of the world. Now next we'll go with the thallus, how the thallus appears like. So when we go to the thallus, so you can see here the thallus is a prostrate thallus, the common point. Here also the thallus is a gametophytic thallus. So we can see here this is also a gametophytic thallus. And just a minute girls, I'm taking the pen. So just I'm taking the text. So you can see here, this is the gametophytic thallus. So what is a gametophytic thallus? Why we are calling it as the gametophyte? Why we are calling it as a gametophyte? All the bryophytes, just now I told you in the previous classes or in the general introduction also, plant body is a gametophyte because it bears the sexual organs in them. And here this thallus is also a prostrate thallus, just like the Markantia. Markantia lo kuda idi prostrate. It is not erect. It is prostrate. Ante enti? This thallus will be growing on the surface of the ground. It will not emerge out. It will grow on the surface of the ground. So that's why we call it as a prostrate thallus. Next, it is dark green in color. So you can see here the thallus. So ikkada kinda meer chuste kanaka ikkadanta kuda dark green color la kanpadutundi. Okay. So that is due to the presence of the chlorophyll pigment or the chloroplast. Next, another important point here is the thallus appears like a rosette. Rosette ante enti? Rosette ante meeku rose ela untundi, the petals of the rose, they are arranged in circles. That manner is called as rosette. ఇక్కడ అన్ని కూడా ఇక్కడ మనకు కనపడే thallus lobes అంతా కూడా they will be arranged in the form of a circle in a regular pattern. Correct pattern లాగా మనకు అన్ని lobes మొత్తం thallus యొక్క ఈ branches అన్ని కూడా ఒక దాని పక్కన మంచిగా అరేంజ్ చేసినట్టు కనపడతాయి. So this is called as a rosette pattern or a rosette like thallus. And these lobes, you can see here, the complete thallus is in the form of the lobe. This is the lobe. Okay. So all these lobes, they are divided into small segments, which are branched. We call it as, this is called as the dichotomous branching. Ante yoka lobe unte kanaka, this lobe is again branched like this. And again here, a small like this. So you can see here, anni lobes kuda it is dichotomy branch producing two branches, and they are arranged side by side in a correct manner like this, in a rosette manner. So this is the structure of the gametophyte of the thallus. So from this thallus, you can see the emerging of the sporophyte. So this is the sporophyte we can talk about. Emerging out just like a horn. So that's why we are calling it as the hornworts. Okay. Now when we talk about, this is also a dorsiventral thallus, just like the Markantia. Dorsal surface is different from the ventral surface. It is also a dorsiventral thallus. I repeat this point once again. Thallus is gametophytic thallus. It is prostrate, dark green in color. It is dichotomously branched, rosette-like. And when we talk about the surface of the thallus, it is very smooth and velvety. Velvety ante manaki metthaga untundi annamata, pattukunte itla chaala soft ga untundi. That is the characteristic feature of these Anthoceros. That is the dorsal surface. When we observe the ventral surface consists of numerous thread-like rhizoids. So by which it is attached to the ventral surface, attached to the soil for absorption and for assimilation. Okay. Next, we'll go for the thallus structure here. You can see here. This is just a minute, I'm taking the eraser so that it can be right. So this is the structure available in the nature. So meer ikkada kinda chuskunte kanaka, I will just annotate once again. So you can see here the basal part along ikkada meeku surface substratum paina it is growing. Okay, it is dark green in color, prostrate, just along the surface of the soil. So from this you can see the sporophyte. So this is the sporophyte. Another generation of this plant, it is emerging out at the time of reproduction. Okay, right. So this is regarding the external thallus or the external morphology of the Anthoceros. Now we'll go for the internal structure, that is the anatomy, right? So when we go for the anatomy of this, even just like your Markantia thallus, this is also differentiated or consisting of two regions, rather to say. It is not differentiated into three, just like in Markantia. But we have only the two regions, that is the epidermal region and the central parenchymatous region. Epidermal region untundi and parenchymatous region. That's it. There is no assimilation zone here. But when you talk about the epidermal region, it is consisting of two layers again, the upper epidermis and the lower epidermis, which is having the barrel-shaped cells. And in the central region, when you go to the parenchymatous zone, all these cells are of parenchymatous cells, and all these cells, they possess the chloroplast, due to which the complete thallus appears green in color. And another important point here is, in this parenchymatous region, we can see the presence of certain empty spaces, what we call them as air cavities, or also some of them are storing the mucilage. They are also called as mucilaginous cavity. This is very, very important in the Anthoceros. We can't find this in the Markantia. Okay. The characteristic feature of Anthoceros enti ante ee parenchymatous region lo there are presence of certain air cavities here, and along with that we can also see certain cavities which are filled with mucilage. And another most important point here is, in these air cavities or in this mucilaginous cavities, we can see the presence of blue-green algal members, that are cyanophytes, blue-green algae. Okay, example, nostoc or anabina. These colonies are going to be found in the mucilaginous cavities of the photosynthetic region of the Anthoceros. So these blue-green algal members, they are showing the symbiotic association with the plant. Symbiotic association. Ante enti ante, these algal members, they are getting the shelter from the Anthoceros thallus. And the Anthoceros is able to get the nitrogen from this blue-green algal members. So they both are mutually benefited. So that association is called as symbiotic association. Okay, this is very, very important point in the Anthoceros. In the air cavities or in the mucilaginous cavities, we can see the presence of blue-green algal members like nostoc or the anabina colonies. We'll go for the next. So here you can see. So this is the air cavity in which you can see the filamentous blue-green algal member, what we call it as the algal filaments, okay, showing the symbiotic association. Next, so that ends with the morphology and the anatomical structure. And another important point here is, I'll go back. So at the lower surface of the epidermal region, that is from the lower epidermis, you can see the development of the rhizoids also, which are very smooth and tuberculate, useful for the fixation of the Anthoceros gametophyte to the thallus, that is to the substratum, that is the soil surface. Now, when we go for the reproduction point of view, the vegetative reproduction in the Anthoceros is carried out first thing by the death of the older parts. So that I told you, when the older part, that is when the Anthoceros becomes old or it undergoes maturity at the time, when the older parts get dead, then the new thallus from that will going to emerge. Okay, that is first point. That is by the first method of vegetative reproduction. So second one is called as the tuber formation. So here you can see. So what are tubers? So the tubers are the structures which are rich in food material. They can store more amount of the food material. Okay. So what they are storing here? They are storing the fats and the proteins. So these tubers generally they develop on the margin. So at the time of unfavorable conditions, these tubers they develop at the margin of the lobes of the thallus. Okay. Now, so when these tubers, when they get detached or when they get separated from the thallus, they utilize. So each tuber here, they will utilizing the food material which is present in it, and they will prepare their own food material. They utilize that food material. They will germinate and produce a new plant. So that is how a vegetative reproduction or the vegetative mode of propagation is carried out in the Anthoceros. Next. And in certain species also, you can see just like in Markantia. So ఇక్కడ చూడండి మీకు థాలస్ ఎంత బాగా కనబడుతుంది. Okay, so just like in Markantia, here also in certain species, we can also see the development of the gemmakers, which are short stalked, and they produce the gemme with which they are going to produce a new plant. Next, another important point is persistent epices. Persistent epices. What do you mean by that? Persistent and ఎప్పటికీ ఉండిపోవడం. Okay, శాశ్వతంగా అన్నమాట. That we call it as persistent. Right. కొన్ని species లో what is going to happen is even the thallus dies. Thallus non-functional చనిపోయినా కూడా the epices of the thallus, they remain buried in the soil. Okay, they remain persistent అంటే మొత్తం థాలస్ పైన కూడా ద ఎపైసెస్ అంటే చివరి థాలస్ యొక్క చివరి మార్జిన్స్ అంటే కదా మార్జినల్ సెల్స్ అంటాం. దోస్ ఆర్ కాల్డ్ యాజ్ ఎపైసెస్. ఓకే, అవి లివింగ్ కండిషన్ లో ఉంటాయి. థాలస్ ఈస్ డెత్. So when this thallus becomes decay, or when we bury the soil in the soil, the cells which are present in that apical cell, that is we call it as the epices, as they are persistent, they have the capacity to divide and produce a new thallus again. So that we call it as the persistent epices. They play a very important role in modifying and propagating the new plant. Okay, so that is regarding the vegetative reproduction. So here in this, we can't see the formation of any spore-like structures. So that ends with the vegetative reproduction. Now next we'll go with the sexual reproduction. Here the sexual reproduction is also of oogamous type. We can see clearly the formation of antheridia, the sexual organs, antheridia and the archegonia. Now, so when we talk about in Markantia, the antheridia and the archegonia, they are developed on a specialized stalk-like structures called antheridiophore and the archegoniophore. But here in Anthoceros, the antheridia and the archegonia, they are developed within the thallus tissue. Okay, they are not emerged. They are not coming out of the thallus. They are present inside the thallus tissue. Okay, now next important point here is Anthoceros is a monoecious thallus. That means to say they are monoecious, that is the male sexual organ, that is antheridia, and the female sexual organ archegonia, they develop in the same plant. అర్థమైనా కానీ మార్కాన్షియా ఏంటి మార్కాన్షియా ఏమో డైషియస్ we can see two separate thallus male thallus is separate female thallus is separate కానీ Anthoceros it is a monoecious thallus we can see both antheridia and the archegonia developed on the same plant or on the same thallus. Next important point is we are finding them within the thallus అంటే thallus లోపల కనపడతాయి. So we call them as embedded sexual organs. They are embedded in the tissues. Okay. They are not emerging out. They are embedded. They are present inside the thallus on the dorsal surface. Okay. So when we talk about the antheridia now, so these antheridia, which is a male sexual organ, which are developed on the dorsal surface of the thallus, and they are developed on a special cavities or the chambers, what we call them as the antheridial chamber. Okay. Now, so you know the structure of the antheridium. We all know that it is going to have a stalk and a globose body, and they are surrounded by a single layer of jacket cells. And one more important point here I want to tell you is in the antheridial chamber, this Anthoceros, they develop almost around 10 to 12 antheridia can be developed in this antheridial chamber with the division of the antheridial mother cells. Okay, right. Now, so at the time of maturity, the antheridial chamber just simply ruptures, by which the antheridia got exposed. Now, from this antheridia, the antheridial wall will absorb the water, and inside the antheridia, we can see the presence of the androcyte mother cells, which will undergo division and produce the male gamete, what we call it as the spermatozoids or the antherozoids, which are also biflagellated or biciliated. It's one and the same. Okay. From the antheridium, the antheridial androcyte mother cells will be there. So we'll just go back to the slide here. So this is all the antheridial androcyte mother cells. All these cells, they will undergo division and produce the antherozoids, the male gamete. And here you can see these antherozoids, they are spindle shaped, which is a characteristic feature of the Anthoceros. They are the spindle shaped and biflagellated. Right. Next, we'll go for the archegonium here. So these archegonia also, they are the embedded sexual organs. Embedded ante thallus lopala untayi. They are not exposed. They are present inside the tissues. And each archegonium, again, we have also discussed, it is a flask-shaped structure having a globose venter and a long neck surrounded by a single layer of jacket layer. And the venter consists of a female gamete, what we call it as an egg cell, and the venter consists of a venter canal cell also. So when we talk about the neck is going to consist of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We can see the presence of 4 neck canal cells in the Anthoceros. Now, another important point what we can see here is on the top of the neck, we can see the presence of the mucilaginous canal or the mucilaginous mound, we can say it as. Here you can see the, just like a cap on the neck of the archegonia, at the time of reproduction, that is when the archegonia is matured, then the top cover cells of the neck, from that oka drop laga, oka mucilaginous drop laga, it will form at the top of the archegonia. We call it as a mucilage mound. Okay, so which is the attractive? Okay, this becomes an attraction for the antherozoids to come towards the archegonia. Ante deeni dwara the antherozoids, the male gametes, gets attracted, and by which they will enter into the archegonia, and the antherozoid, the male gamete, will fuse with the female gamete, the so-called egg cell. Am I clear to this point, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So now we'll go for the fertilization. So now here also the water is the medium which is essential for the fertilization to carry the antherozoids towards the archegonia. Okay. So at the time of fertilization, in the archegonia, the venter canal cell and in the neck, the 4 neck canal cells, they will disintegrate and just they'll create a passage for the antherozoids to move into the venter. Now, next thing is the archegonial neck. It will going to absorb the water, it swell and just is pushing the cell cover cells apart. Now, mucilaginous mass which is present in the top of the neck, it will just open and allow the antherozoids to move into the venter and fuse with the egg. So this is called as the fertilization. So you can see here. So this is the gametophyte. Okay, this is before reproduction. Now after, that is after the 1 month of the growth of this gametophyte, you can see the development of the antheridium in the antheridial chamber and the archegonia within the thallus. They develop, and at the time of reproduction, this antheridia produces the antherozoids. Now from this antheridial chamber, the antherozoids will reach the archegonium and fuse with the egg cell which is present in the venter and results in the formation of the zygote, a diploid zygote. So with the help of the formation of the zygote, there ends the gametophytic generation. Next. So after the completion of the gametophyte, now we are moving into the next generation of the Anthoceros, that is the sporophyte. Now, what is this sporophyte here? So how is this sporophyte? Here you can see, this is the sporophyte. The long projecting thallus, which is also green in color, coming out of this basal prostrate gametophyte. Okay, so zygote is the starting cell for the formation of this sporophyte. So here, it is a very characteristic feature of the Anthoceros where the sporophyte is in the form of a long, slender, erect structure. I repeat these terms. They are long, slender and straight ga undadam. Okay, erect and cylindrical. అంటే మీకు చూస్తే ఇది రౌండ్ గా ఒక ట్యూబ్ లాగా కనబడుతుంది. Okay, then this is completely, whatever the structure you can see here, that is the structure of the capsule. It appears just like a horn of an animal. So అందుకని వీటిని horn warts అని పిలిచాం. Okay, this is the capsule region. This entire part becomes the capsule. So generally మనకు sporophyte అంటే it consists of 3 parts. What are those 3 parts? Foot,
Seta,
foot, seta and the capsule. So ikkada meeku ee kanapade structure edante, that is the capsule. It is around 2 to 15 centimeters in length. Okay, enter length. How much
3
is that
to
length?
15 centimeter.
Yeah, 2 to 15 centimeters in length. Okay, so this entire structure is a capsule. And what about the foot and the seta? They are embedded, they are present inside the gametophyte. So now we'll go for the structure of the sporophyte. First we'll come to the foot region. So the basal part of the sporophyte is considered as the foot, which is a round, idantha kuda foot anamata, okay, which is a round or bulbous structure present deeply embedded in the tissue of the thallus. Idi manaki thallus, gametophytic thallus lo baga attach ayi untundi. That we call it as embedded within the tissue. So this is the foot region. Now, the lowermost cells of the foot. So ikkada meeki the lowermost cells of the foot, we call them as the haustoria. Ante the the first form, ante last foot ki last lo unna ee region anta kuda that is represented as the haustoria. Ante entante these are the cells which are helping in absorbing the water and the nutrients for the capsule from the gametophyte. Sporophyte is independent kaadu. This is dependent on the gametophyte. It can't prepare its own food material. It will take the nutrients from the gametophyte. So this haustoria of the foot will absorb the water and the food material from the gametophyte. Next, the intermediate. So ikkada meeku sita anedi anta clear ga develop ainattu kanpadadu, but there is a meristematic zone here between the capsule and the foot region. This is the meristematic zone, where this zone, it will regenerate from the base. Thus the capsules are always in different stages of growth. Meristematic ante eppudu kuda the cells are under division. ఈ cells ఎప్పుడు కూడా డివైడ్ అవుతూనే ఉంటాయి. ఓకే, సో దిస్ ఇస్ ద మెరిస్టమాటిక్ జోన్. మనకి సీటా అనేది అంత క్లియర్ గా డెవలప్ అయినట్టు కనపడదు ఆంథోసిరాస్ లో. ఓకే, సో ద రోల్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ మెరిస్టమాటిక్ జోన్ ఈజ్ ఆల్వేస్ అండర్ keep on division or regeneration of producing the capsule tissue. అందుకని మనకి capsule అంత పొడుగా grow అయినట్టు కనపడుతుంది. ఎందుకు growth? That growth is mainly due to the meristematic activity of this zone. ఇక్కడ cells divide అవుతూనే ఉంటాయి. Divide అయ్యి the capsule region will keep on growing and extending. So that's why the length of the capsule is so much in the Anthoceros. లేకపోతే ఇక్కడ మెరిస్టమాటిక్ జోన్ లేకపోతే మనకి ఆ క్యాప్స్యూల్ రీజియన్ ఒక సింపుల్ గ్లోబోస్ రీజియన్ లాగా ఉండేది. కానీ ఇక్కడ సిటా లేనందుకు మెరిస్టమాటిక్ జోన్ ఉన్నందుకు which is a regenerating zone which will be keep on dividing and making the capsule enlarged. Now, the most important, the next thing is the capsule structure. So you can see here, this is the long capsule which is around 2 to 15 centimeters in length, green in color, slender, erect, and pointing towards the atmosphere, which is projecting out of the thallus, and it is a cylindrical, round cylindrical structure laga untundi. Okay, next. So when we talk about the capsule, it is divided into 3 regions again. The outer capsule wall layer, this is the outer capsule wall layer, and in the center you can see a very important region, what we call it as columella, or we are also calling it as a conducting strand. And on either side of this columella, we can see the sporogenous tissue producing the spores. So this is the external structure of the capsule. The capsule of Anthoceros is divided into 3 regions: capsule wall, central columella, and the sporogenous tissue. So when we talk about the capsule wall, this is very important question, the structure of sporophyte, Anthoceros sporophyte. Okay, so when we take the TS, transverse section of the capsule, it appears just like this. We can see this is the outermost layer of the capsule. We call it as the capsule wall. Okay, so which is around 4 to 6 layers of parenchymatous tissue. Next, it is surrounded by a cuticle. We call it as cutinized because it helps important for the protecting the sporogenous tissue towards inner side. Next, below this capsule wall or this epidermal layer is a parenchymatous tissue or the photosynthetic zone consisting of the chloroplast. That's why the capsule appears green in color. And when we go to the central part, here you can see a columella which appears just like a square in the center, helpful for conduction. And surrounding that, you can see the sporogenous tissue or the sporogenous cells, helping in providing the formation of the spores. Now, this is the sporogenous tissue, what I told you, which is called as archisporium. Now, in this sporogenous tissue, after the formation, that is, we can see the presence of the sporogenous mother cells or spore mother cells, which are going to divide by meiosis or by the reduction division and produces the spores and the pseudo-elaters. Okay, so this is the central region, what we call it as the columella. This columella is a long layer of 16 rows of cells, helping providing the mechanical support to the capsule and also for the conduction of the water and the minerals from the gametophyte to the foot region, from the foot through the columella. The food is and the water is supplied to the sporogenous tissue of the entire capsule. So that is the role of the columella. Now, when this capsule is mature, okay, then this entire capsule will lose water. The columella will stop functioning. It will not allow or the supplies the water. Then the entire capsule becomes very much dry enough. So water lekapothe etla untundi? Water lekapothe a leaf aina plant aina it appears dry. Okay. Now, so the capsule becomes very dry enough. So when it becomes dry, we can see a slit appearing in the center of the capsule. Slit ante endante oka చీలిక లాగా ఏర్పడుతుంది. So it gradually goes down. మొత్తం క్యాప్సూల్ లోపల మొత్తం కూడా ఒక చీలిక లాగా ఏర్పడుతుంది. So this due to the formation of this slit, the capsule just gets opened. Open అయినప్పుడు ఏమవుతుంది? ఈ spores whatever are going to be formed inside the capsule, all these spores will just come out of the capsule and they are just dispersed by the air into the surrounding environment. Okay, so when we observe the spore here in the Anthoceros, the spore is getting surrounded by pseudo-elater. So ikkada meeku kanpadutunnayi kada, this is the pseudo-elater, helping in dispersal of the spore into the surrounding environment. So this is how the spores are liberated into the surrounding environment. Now, this spore, it will undergo germination to produce a new plant. So ఏంటి ఇక్కడ ఈ స్పోర్ అనేది ఒక్క స్పోర్ మదర్ సెల్ నుంచి it is going to be forming 4 spores. So that's why we call it as a spore tetrad. Now from this spore, it will undergo division and forms a rhizoidal cell and a thallus or a gametophytic cell. It develops a germ tube-like structure where it is undergoing several divisions and forms the meristematic tissue or the a new gametophytic tissue. That's how the germination of the spore will appear. Now we'll go for the life cycle of the Anthoceros. So when we talk for the life cycle, here also we can see clearly the two generations, that is a gametophytic generation and the sporophytic generation. So from the Anthoceros, the male reproductive organ Antheridia develop, female reproductive organ Archegonia will develop. From the Antheridium, the male gametes called as anthrozoids, and the female gamete egg is developed in the venter. They both are going to fuse and form the zygote. There ends a gametophytic generation. So the zygote will keep on dividing and forms an multicellular embryo which develops into a capsule or the sporophyte, which is a sporophytic generation. So we can see here the capsule, the sporophyte having the globose base, what we call it as a foot, and a long elongated capsule. Now from this capsule, this on maturity produce the spores, which are formed from the spore mother cell, which undergo meiotic division and producing the tetrad of spores. Now these spores, they develop into on germination, develops into a young new thallus. So with that, the life cycle is going to be ended. Okay. Now, so this here, the thallus is a diploid thallus and the sporophyte is a haploid thallus. So the life cycle is regarded as a diplohaplontic life cycle, and we can see the alternation of generation of the gametophyte alternating with the sporophyte. So this is regarding the stop sharing. Yes, ma'am. So this is regarding the life cycle of the thallus, of the Anthoceros. Yes, ma'am. So any doubts here?